In this special segment of A Real Word for Real Times, we'll look at the criminalization of homelessness in America and those to whom these laws could ultimately apply. The criminalization of homelessness in America is a very important issue, an issue that is rarely discussed and all but completely ignored by mainstream media. This is very tragic, given the fact that the price of such necessities as rent, food, and gas has continued to skyrocket upward with no end in sight. We originally reported on anti-homelessness laws in America in June of 2017, and in 2021, 5 years later, these statistics on and the consequences of homelessness have gotten worse. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Office of Community Planning and Development, reported in their 2020 Annual Homeless Assessment Report to Congress the following. On a single night in 2020, roughly 580,000 people were experiencing homelessness in the United States, and of that number, 39% were in unsheltered locations, such as the street or in abandoned buildings or in other places not suitable for human habitation. The report further stated that for the fourth consecutive year, homelessness increased nationwide. The report goes on to state that the number of unsheltered people and families with children increased for the first time since data collection began. And in 2020, just under 172,000 people and families with children were experiencing homelessness, and that the number of unsheltered people and families increased by 13%. It was further discovered that on a single night in 2020, 34,000 people under the age of 25 experienced homelessness on their own as unaccompanied youth, with 90% of them being between the ages of 18 and 24. What does all this mean? It means that at any given time, more than 500,000 Americans are subject to persecution and ultimately incarceration, not because they stole something or damaged property, nor any other kind of crime that would come to mind. Their infraction? Being homeless. And in some communities, it is even illegal to provide assistance to these homeless Americans without a permit. So exactly who is it that on any particular day in America could be fined and even incarcerated? The homeless, according to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, is defined as a person who lacks a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. In many cities where homelessness is illegal, a person could be deemed as homeless if they perform such basic functions in public as sitting, sleeping, brushing teeth, or even shielding oneself against the elements of weather. Such acts could be considered as criminal and subject the offender to fines or even incarceration. Examples of some of the anti-homelessness laws that are on the books among the more than 167 cities that have passed such laws include: the homeless cannot block a sidewalk, stand in a roadway median, or block a building. Punishment: arrest and fine up to $500. The homeless cannot block walkways. Punishment: arrest and jail time up to 6 months and or fine up to $2,000. The homeless cannot sleep in tents, boxes, or any other makeshift shelter on public property. Punishment: arrest and fine up to $500. The homeless cannot trespass on private property under state law. Punishment: arrest and jail time up to 6 months and or fine up to $2,000. The homeless cannot have heating devices. Punishment: arrest and fine up to $500. The homeless cannot carry around belongings that take up space more than 3 feet long, 3 feet wide, 3 feet tall. Punishment: arrest and fine up to $500. And people cannot spontaneously feed more than 5 homeless people without a permit. Now, city officials in these cities claim that anti-homelessness laws are needed for such reasons as ensuring public safety, preventing illicit activities such as drug trafficking, eliminating the presence of unsanitary waste and trash, and removing what is considered to be a public nuisance. The goals of these public officials are to ensure that all citizens are safe and to clear away eyesores in the city. Now that we're more familiar with the laws that criminalize homelessness and those to whom these laws apply, let's now take a look at those who are at risk of persecution and the conditions that could bring such an event about. Career Builder found that 78% of U.S. workers are living paycheck to paycheck. As COVID-19 mandates come into play, we can expect that percentage to increase significantly. This is in addition to the more than 3.2 million people that face eviction due to the loss of jobs because of COVID-19. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York recently reported that U.S. household debt climbed to a new record of $15.24 trillion. This is along with even higher inflation, which makes it much more difficult for families to make ends meet. Finance Pond found in their 2021 survey that 63% of Americans say that they have been living paycheck to paycheck since the COVID-19 pandemic hit in early 2020. 60% of millennials bringing in over $100,000 claim to be living paycheck to paycheck. 54% of all Americans, that's nearly 125 million people, are living paycheck to paycheck regardless of age and income. In the first 3 months of 2021, 49% of Americans admitted to saving less than $500, and 40% of those individuals were hit by job loss or a decline in monthly income. Almost 40% of U.S. consumers with yearly salaries over $100,000 live paycheck to paycheck. That equates to roughly 32 million Americans nationwide. 33% of all U.S. consumers, that's 85 million Americans, earn a yearly salary below $50,000. 72% of them are living paycheck to paycheck throughout the United States. The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis economic research of April 2017 revealed that there are approximately 205 million working-age Americans, of which close to one-half of them have no financial cushion whatsoever. With so many households in perilous financial condition, the health of America's economy could very well be the difference between a normal everyday life or poverty, homelessness, and ultimately incarceration. Now, regarding America's economy, consider just a few of the many areas that we can look at. The Wall Street Journal reported in February 2022 that the U.S. trade deficit increased 27% over 2021 to an all-time high of $859.1 billion. The Wall Street Journal also reported in February 2022 that Americans took on more new debt in 2021 than in any year since before the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Total household debt rose by $1.02 trillion. On February 1, 2022, the U.S. Department of Treasury reported the national debt to be at a record high of $30 trillion. On top of all of this, America long gave up her ability to be the world's leading manufacturer of products and instead became a consumer nation. As a result, America is unable to produce enough products to sustain true economic growth, put her workforce to work, and pay off the exorbitant debt that she is currently in. Thus, any kind of serious economic downturn would be catastrophic to the nation and her people, and thus throw many more into the streets and quite possibly, ultimately, into a jail cell. Now, what could be done to avert this catastrophe? God desires for each and every one of us to love one another, and that means to help one another. It means that we have to speak up about these anti-homelessness laws. We have to begin to hold elected officials accountable and responsible for the decisions that they are making. We have to push them to create more jobs in this country. And I know that these are issues that are somewhat difficult, but it is our responsibility to help one another, our responsibility to love one another enough to see that, hey, let me help my brother, because you never know. You may go to bed in a comfortable life tonight and wake up tomorrow on the streets. We have the responsibility to love one another, to come together as a people, not based on race or religion or anything else, just as human beings, to come together to help one another, because there are a lot of us that are in trouble and we are facing the possibility of being cast into jail. So we hope that all of you that are listening to this would at least think about this and decide to help your brother. Thank you for tuning in to A Real Word for Real Times, speaking to the critical issues we face in our everyday lives. I'm Elder Stephen E. Hurst.